Hello, lovely Eurovision fans. My name is Euan. This is That Eurovision Site, Eurovision with a Slice of Life. Joining me today is the lovely Rory.
Hello, how are we?
I am fantastic. I'm so excited to be talking with you again because we are doing something that we have discussed before. We're discussing Das Deutsche Finale, a German national selection. You may recall in another podcast that we did, we were discussing early 2010s German national selections, and we were raving about how amazing they were. Well, that's probably the
Yeah,
last
I miss
positive thing
them
that we're going to be
days.
saying about German national selections, given yeah. So we're going to be discussing Das Deutsche Finale 2024. So Germany had a 9-song selection in one night to pick their entrant. There was Isaak with Always on the Run. He won with a decisive 24 points, two sets of 12s from the public vote and from the jury vote. Prior to this, there was a multi-stage pre-show selection for one of the acts with Ich will so im ESC. Sorry, I absolutely butchered that. And it was Florian with Scars who got in there. Arguably, he was the song that should have won the actual selection. So, but this isn't the point of that yet. So, Rory,
Yes,
what
Ewan.
are your overall thoughts on how the show went, like its production values? What did you think of it watching it?
Okay, right. So the first thing that I have to say is that even though the reputation of the contest right now in Germany is pretty much through the floor, the fact that we're able still to get it into a sort of studio, like a fairly big studio, kind of shows that people are pretty happy with how things have gone, and they're very clearly that ARD is still trying to funnel some money and some cash into the contest, so like to show that it is a quite a professional show. And I think for the in terms of like the actual production of the show, and in terms of things like that, I think it was very well produced, but I've never really thought that was a problem for Germany anyway. From what we sort of looked at in previous years, I mean, I think they've always been fairly professional when it comes to these kinds of things. um Again, I was kind of going into this, I was a bit unsure about how things were going to go in terms for the results and stuff, but obviously we'll get to that in a bit later. But yeah, I mean, it was a pleasant watching experience. I can't say that, like I had a terrible time watching it, because, we had a good stage, we had a great host. I know that a lot of people don't really like Barbara Schöneberger as
I'm sorry,
a
where the hell have you heard that opinion? And who are these people? Name them. Like
basically.
they should be banned, expelled from the fandom because that's just sacrilege.
I mean, okay, for those of you who might not know necessarily the team, Barbara Schöneberger has some questionable choices and about comments that she has made about men who wear makeup and stuff like that, and has been rather vocal about these kind of things. And a lot of people have this idea that she's sort of the old version of Eurovision. Now, obviously, as international fans, we have no fucking clue what's going on with that, because obviously we're not clued up on how big the Eurovision scene is in Germany. So I guess I should probably just shut up while I have a chance. But yeah, overall, I mean, I had a great time watching this. I don't think it was a particularly bad show. I think it was competent, and for a big five country, I think that should be the standard for what that is. I mean, how about you?
I think I agree because although Germany has they have selections every year. They've had a few internal ones, and then there was what they did in 2021, which is sort of like half open. But they have a long history of national selections and being with the same broadcaster. But everything is really it's quite ad hoc. It's like it's there seems to be start fresh every year, and usually when that happens, they tend to be a bit of a mess. With some countries like that. I mean, I just think with like the French national elections, they're because they chopped and changed so much, they're not really that great quality. So you kind of would expect it to happen in Germany, but no, it was a great all-round production value. Um, yeah, it was a really nice stage for like a TV a TV center one because lots of the times when that happens in like TV studios, the stages are just really a bit lacking, but they actually made proper effort to make it a nice way to actually present the songs, and it was a nice pace as well. Uh, I barely speak any German, so I wasn't really catching what was happening in the little green room with the four of them and Barbara. But it was nice way of breaking up the song. It didn't feel overly, let's have 30 minutes talking about this act and then let's be into song two, and then it's like 2 hours in and you're not even in song four. It was well paced. A little bit messy at times with sort of the actual staging of the performances itself. I think, like you're saying, they clearly put money into it, but I would have liked them to put more money into the budgets of the artists themselves, because there were some really good songs in there, which we'll get to, but it wasn't really coming off there. Some of them were just a bit meh, and you had that great stage, and there was probably a better way to showcase it. But yeah, overall, I think it was a very enjoyable show. I'm a big defender of German national selections. I think they get a lot. Germany in Eurovision gets a lot of hate, and well, obviously Germany does
Some
get
is deserved, some
some,
isn't, but
like some of it's deserved. This year definitely deserved. But like Germany in Eurovision is really good, and I think this was a good example of its ability to do national final, because like I hope they kind of sort of stick with this like Das Deutsche Finale, and they don't kind of sort of like chop and change it and go all over the place, and just like they need to sort of stick with something, rather than just going wild. Sorry, I'm digressing, but yeah. So Rory,
yeah.
what were your thoughts of the songs itself? Were there any of the nine that stuck out to you that you particularly enjoyed?
Now that's a question. Uh
Were there any you absolutely detested? Because that's probably that makes better content.
yeah. Again, that's a question. Um I think it's hard because when it comes to Germany, I mean the regular kind of criticism that ARD gets is that a lot of them are just so radio friendly and so inoffensive that they are offensive. And there were a good number of songs this year that I would say definitely fall into that category. I mean, like, look, I mean, I would like to say that I'm the very much the left field connoisseur here on this site, but I'm talking to Ewan, so currently that's actually
I
just
mean, I
not
was just about to say
true.
that really says something, given like one, who you're speaking to me, and two, it's that Eurovision site. We've got some wild opinions and tastes here.
That is true. That is true. But I like to think of myself as one that's a bit more interested in the more experimental side of things as opposed to the sort of, traditional kind of contemporary pop, top 40 hits kind of thing. And there was a good number of songs this year in that selection that really were like that just didn't did not rub me the right way, which is really annoying because like I really want to get behind Germany and I have done a couple of times before. It's just that this year the songs were just very eh, you know. I mean, okay, I'll go through some of the ones that I really like. So the main three that I liked were number one was Rick. I mean, again, I didn't really watch the 2018 national selection when he was in it the first time, but this song just clicked in a way that so many of the other songs just didn't. So, I was really, really looking forward to his performance and going into the national selection. I also really liked Bodine. I thought that was quite a nice song. Yes, it is a little bit maybe generic, but it has a memorability factor, like in the fact that I would just be walking around my flat for the next like 2 days afterwards, just sort of just singing to myself like tears like rain, like just like in her like terrible like cursive accent. But it worked obviously, like so it clearly just didn't make as much of an impact as she wanted it to, but there would have been potential there. And then I also really did like Katza as well. It was one that I wish that they kind of developed further in the production. I think there could have been something really good in terms of the potential, but then I guess the way that the selection works, I guess, is that you're not really able to build up any more on what you want to do. So yeah, it wasn't particularly the best performance, but it was the one that I was the most intrigued by. But in terms for songs that I didn't like, I mean, look, I have made it very clear on this podcast, on this site, on everything that I am a schlager hater. I do not like this kind of style. So, very much not a fan of Naive. Very much not a fan of Max Mutzke. Don't know how he managed to get second place. It's crazy. Also, wasn't a huge fan of Scars. Also, wasn't a big fan of Love on a Budget too. Yeah, and Undream You was also particularly bland for me too. So yeah, there was the songs that I did like, I liked a lot, but then the ones that I didn't like were the ones that I was just like, can we just get over with it as soon as possible? But yeah, I mean, how about you? I mean, obviously, I have some very controversial opinions, but nowhere near as much as you.
So I live tweeted this selection for the site, and after song three, because you went 99 with Love on a Budget, Leona, Undream You, and then Isaak with Always on the Run. I was thinking, why the hell have I agreed to live tweet this? This is dire. And then you got straight into Katza, which again, I think I agree with you. It did need to be a little bit more fleshed out because I don't know if I actually like love this or if the fact that the preceding three songs were just that bad. They sort of like anything slightly liked just had to jump on. Yeah, I thought it was certainly an okay one. It's not something that I've really like listened to since, but every so often I like it will just like the Katza will just like pop into my head.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's what you're saying earlier about Germany going for something that's very extremely middle of the road and safe. But this is sort of like the electronica equivalent of that. Like Germany has such an amazing electronica scene, electropop and everything like that, and just like the best you can come up with was Katze. I mean, really, like there's so many acts. There needs to be a better way of like bringing in that style of music because that's what Germany is amazing. There's two things they're amazing at are electropop and metal, and two things that are extremely lacking. Because I thought last year the selection show was amazing for having like the diversity of genres, and you
Yeah.
end up picking something. Yeah, okay. Lord of the Lost did awful, but I'm glad that they were at least there. It's because
I'd have much rather have had them than Ika Hufgold, we'll tell you that much.
yeah, I would have rather have a cat well a cat's screaming for 3 minutes than that, but yeah,
Well,
you end up
yeah.
like you sent something different, something distinctly German, and honestly some of the best vocals of the year. But then this selection there's not really a lot of that diversity. There's nothing really distinctively German. So much of this is so middle of the road. I mean, my favorite was it was Scars by Florian. And look, it's a sad man.
Why?
It's
Why
a
are you
sad
like
man.
this?
um yeah, like I think it just really hit like it just struck with me his vocals.
Hmm.
Bodine, meh. I mean, I like Schlager, and I think with Mary Rhyme with Naive, like I don't really know if I actually like the song or if it's just everything else was just so bad, but it was okay. Maximus, I honestly have no idea. Forever Strong came second, like, and it was very very close to like being first in the televote. There's only 3,000 votes in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Oh Boy by Rick, like it should have won because I think also considering what we now have all the songs out, Rick would have stood out so much in this year because we're really lacking strong male vocalists like soloists, and there's not really a lot of that. And I think Germany had like has thrown away a chance for if the cars were played right, the staging was great, it sounded great, maybe even a top 10. Because let's moving on to our thoughts on actually Always on the Run. Because personally, I'm thinking this is coming last. Um, I cannot see. I can't even see this getting any jury votes because the way that the juries work, they rank all of the songs, and it's so middle of the road. I can't actually see it get a single point. What are your thoughts with that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I get that. I think I would sort of say that if it was coming down to the jury votes, I could see this get to like maybe like 11th or 12th or something like that. But 11th or 12th doesn't not translate into
Yeah,
any points,
yeah,
you
I could
know?
firmly see it being like that because like it's very much like Embers because you had someone who could sing it and sing really well, but like the song is just nothing.
Pleasant. It's
Yeah,
pleasant. And pleasant in a competition, like in a singing competition, in a song competition, is not what you want to be. You want to be daring. You want to be able to stand out. And if your song is just like something that would be heard as a non-single track on a Rag and Bone Man album, is that if it hasn't even got the potential to be released as a single, then what is even the point in you even have sending the song to Eurovision, you know? Um, this was definitely not the one that I wanted to go to Malmo, but given the performance, I mean, he was the only one really that kind of regularly made eye contact with the camera, and it was very clear that this probably was the one that the broadcaster wanted to send, but then it was just a case of building the national final around it. Um, but yeah, I think this is going to struggle when it gets to Malmo, because it's like, you know, yes, we all thought the same thing about with the Big Five last year, you know, how everyone has sort of elevated and they'd all brought something specific to their culture and their country. This year is definitely not the case again, but I think everyone else has kept up that elevation from last year. And Germany is just falling behind again, which is just really sad because, again, we know that Germany has a really thriving music scene and we've seen it so many times, but then the national final just does not reflect that. And it's such a shame. So, yeah, I can totally see this coming bottom five again. I will be shocked if it comes higher than 20th, genuinely shocked. Um, but yeah, something has got to give in Germany. There's got to be something to do for them just to like get it again, because they had it before. If they had it with Michael Schulte, where they can get a top five position and still, you know, even that was a particularly like, you know, generic song, I
Mhm.
personally feel. But even though that was still a generic song, it still reached an audience. And even then, like, oh, I could just keep ranting on for ages if I do, so I'm not going to stop. But yeah, anyway, let me know what do you think?
Well, I'm like I'm agreeing with this was because when you think about Michael Schultz and even the preceding ones, let's exclude 2017 because that was a
Oh,
terrible
let's
national
not talk about
selection.
that
Like there
selection.
was the song was it's she was lovely.
Everything else.
Yeah, I mean the rest goes without saying. But like when because obviously we did our podcast on early 2010s German national elections. So even in the years where Germany was doing absolutely dreadful, there were songs in all of those years that were top five potential. The era of Germany even having those top five songs and just rejecting them just doesn't seem to be there like anymore. It's so rare that we actually get songs in German selections that are that are have a chance to do well. Like, yeah, there's some that I love, but in a country of 80 million people, yeah, it's a lot. It's the largest country in that participates in Eurovision. Such a well-developed music scene in all different styles, like renowned, and you have one song out of nine that could potentially do like maybe well, and like this just
And then even then, it
it's
just
just
doesn't get thrown
dreadful.
in.
Like, but actually, it moves on to another point. So, what would you change about the national selection? Because one thing I would want to mention first, the voting system is dreadful.
Hmm.
Stop converting your points to Eurovision style and then combine them with a jury vote and a public vote. So there's only 24 points. That's not enough points in your selection. It works at Eurovision because there's about 40 countries that are competing each year and you're getting hundreds and hundreds of votes. There's so few votes that it just doesn't work. And this is not just a German thing, but it's just awful. Like Belgium last year, I think, has the best way to do the national selection show, and just having there's like 700 points on offer. There's so many different points because you have the jury vote. You have a 50% jury vote and 50% public vote, and you've got all these different streams that have got the phone calls, SMS, and an online vote. That's great, but why are you combining them all down together? They're not the same thing. People vote online differently to how they vote on SMSs. It's like combining in other selections where they combine demoscopic and televotes. They're
Hmm.
not the same thing. You have this different opportunity to vote. People are going to vote differently because you look at like the wildly different breakdown in the points between online and telephone ones. Like it just doesn't work. The entire voting system is just wrong, and that's before we even get into how they've selected songs. But sorry, I'll let you go now.
No, 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 totally. I mean, like, just thinking of that. I mean, it like turning it into Eurovision style points does work for some countries, but just not for Germany, not on this scale.
Mhm.
Because I mean, like, given the breakdown of the voting things, I mean, like, we're looking at, for example, Max Mutzke dominated the phone votes, but then obviously then uh coming out on top then with the SMS and the online was Isaak, and then afterwards. So, and then just condensing all of that down into just a certain amount of points is just mental to me, I guess. I don't know. But
Because
yeah,
if
so
you look at like the phone votes for well sorry the entire votes for like 99 who got 18,000 and then Leona who got 16,000, that's there's 2 point difference in that. Like those are not that different when you consider the amount of votes that are cast. That's a whole 2 different points. Those should
yeah.
really be like giving the same things because there's not that big a difference between them. But they have huge repercussions throughout. Yeah, sorry, on you go.
No, no,
Just
no,
love ranting about
totally.
your Eurovision voting systems.
No, no, it's true. But yeah, so that would be something that I would definitely sort of look at, just trying to implement better. Like, like yes, we take the piss out of it, but maybe even to implementing like a Danish style way of sort of doing that, I think would, in a way of accurately and proportionately representing who's gotten the most votes. I think that's not a bad idea at all. So that would be something that I would get them to consider. I would also get them to bring the national final back to sort of being like, again, at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. even, because putting it on at 10 p.m. is obviously like 10 p.m. local time. This is obviously very clearly a deliberate move from the broadcaster to stop a certain demographic from like taking part in the democratic process, which feels weird when you hear it. But then when you obviously think of the rationale of like maybe they're trying to stop like, I don't know, boomers from hijacking the vote and being like, oh, this guy sounds nice, with his song about radio friendly, and then that like we'll go with that, But then it
But
clearly
it's just
still
funny that it's still you end up with the most like
it
boring
still
radio friendly one,
happened.
boomer friendly one
Yeah.
voting. It's strange. Yeah.
Yeah. So they need to look at sort of bringing it back to being like pre-watershed, at least just so that there can be more people that can be involved. I think it's not it's if anything, it's isolating other groups from taking part in the contest, like younger people. Like, hello, the younger demographic of viewers is like like the largest amount when it comes to Eurovision. So I don't understand why you wouldn't want younger people to get involved with this entire selection process. I don't. Oh, it pisses me off. Um, but yeah, I also would just want them to just take more risks. We've seen it before. Last year we had some great ones. We had like, yes, Frida Gold didn't manage to make it to the actual selection because she was ill, etc. But Frida Gold, Lord of the Lost, Ika, as much as I don't want in there, in terms for the genres that were represented, I think it was fantastic. I think it was a fantastic show. But then this year, it just felt like we were just going back to 2022 again, where everything was just so bland and generic that nothing really stood out. And that's how we ended up getting Malik, and now it's how we've gotten Isaak. So there needs to be more diversity. And I think there also needs to be potentially the bringing back of the 100-person Eurovision jury again. I think that was in itself quite an interesting concept. We didn't really have that in previous editions. So for anyone who didn't know, part of the German sort of results in the run up to sort of 2018 and 2019, etc., they had a 100-person specific Eurovision jury made up of fans from across the country, and they got to sort of impart part of their results in there too. And like they had their like ear to the ground on how things should actually have been. Like I think they gave their points to Lily Among Clouds, I think it was in 2019, robbed completely, just as a story for another time. But by bringing that in itself is the kind of demoscopic jury in terms of what we were talking about. It's bringing a fan voice, but a respected fan voice, because we know what we're on about. We're the ones that are like engaging with this contest 365 days a year. We should have some kind of voice in how or in what gets sent to the contest. And I mean, it's happened with Switzerland, and look at how well Switzerland is doing. It's now on a qualification streak, regularly getting high amounts of points. I don't understand why Germany isn't looking at what's happening around them and not taking notes. I like, how does that not work? I just don't understand it. So I feel like I'm like knocking my head against a brick wall with this, but I mean, there's only so much that you can kind of suggest to a broadcaster. So, but yeah, anyway, I've run rambling too much. What do you think? What's been going on for you?
I mean, I think not in the same format, but what they did in 2014 and 2015, the artists had multiple songs there.
Mm,
Maybe give them the option of having multiple songs in there instead of just having instead of like letting okay, everyone submit a song. Go out and find five renowned, well, like five German singers who or groups or whatever who can do so, and then let them select several songs. If Germany wants to send something middle of the road, let them pick from that the middle of the road song. But like give the option for them to at least have do something a little bit quirky. Not with the 2014, 2015 format, because it's the wrong way around. With not actually like letting the best song of them be in the contention of it. But there needs to be a better way because even when you think last year, some of the more like I think Renee Miller, that was a boring sad lad power ballad, which I
mm.
loved. It was my favorite, but it was still a lot more out there. I hated Melodies of Hope, but it was out there. It was like what you're saying, like they need to have the opportunity to do that. But if acts are worried that they're just going to be sending something that's just too weird, too out there, give them the opportunity to send the ridiculously weird out there song and have a safe backup. That's how I think Germany could potentially do well because they're not wanting to take a risk because their only real successes since 2010 onwards was a middle of the road pop song. Okay, yeah, like 2011, but like I mean, Mother,
Oh no, I will
like,
not
but
have
that's
any
because
slander
she
on
was a winner. But so
2011.
I don't know. I don't really know how you can explain that. Like that one doing well. But then you have 2012, middle of the road pop song, and 2018, very middle of the road. So I understand why Germany is doing this because they finally send something that's completely out there, so exceptionally German, and it comes last. Unjustly, it should have been top five. That's Lord of the Lost, that is. But yeah, just they need to do something. They need to look at those different genres, having some diversity in the actual selection. Yeah, but I mean, these are just points I've made altogether. But I think we've already sort of touched on this, but like real thoughts, what do we actually think that Isaak will come? Personally, I think last with no jury points, maybe one or two televotes.
I could see that. I think I would say maybe clambering like maybe one or two jury points max, but then only getting like 5 or 6 points or something like that from the televote because there will still be a good number of people who will still go for this kind of song, who will still vote for this. Um, but I'm still seeing last place, maybe bottom five. Like, but that's only if there's like a miracle, you know. If it gets outside of the bottom five, I will genuinely be shocked. But for the most part, I think it will be just like last or second last or something like that, which is a shame. And I think it sort of breaks a record, doesn't it, or something that Germany will be then the one country that has come last the most amount of times consecutively, because it'll be that third or fourth time in a row or something.
I mean, has it
Um,
overtaken Norway for the most lasts overall now? Because I think
uh,
actually this, or is it this, if they do come last this year, I
if
think that
they,
might be
I
it.
don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, have Germany finished last more than 10 times?
Might be in
Let us know in
contention.
the comments below. But yeah, that's how I'm seeing it. You know,
It's just really sad to see Germany like this when there is so much potential. But yeah, I think that's all we have to say on Germany because if we continue, we'll just be ranting on constantly until the next
it
election
comes
comes
from a
round.
place of love.
Yes,
At
it
least
comes
we
from
know
true.
that.
We're not saying this because we hate Germany in the context. Well, I don't know about Rory because I love Germany in the contest. Even
No, it's fine.
even on their iffy points, they've still had like some charm to them.
Yeah,
But moving on.
totally.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you would like to check out any more of our videos, we'll be discussing all the national selections, all of the internal selections in the run up to Eurovision. We'll also be at pre-parties, and you will find content all the way up to Eurovision itself. Follow for more interviews and discussions and analysis of this year's Eurovision Song Contest, because we are that Eurovision site, Eurovision with a slice of life. So don't
Woo!
forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads,
Yes.
Blue Sky, Tumblr,
Yes.
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Look, any social media that you can think of, we're on it. Yeah, and you can also listen to any of our podcasts or any of our content via Apple Music, podcasts, and via Spotify. Thank you so much for listening to us. We hope you have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.